This is Pace the Nation.
When you climb up that hill, well, eventually you'll come down. If the wind's at your back, you never wear a frown. You're waiting on that second wind to begin to kick in.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Pace the Nation, broadcasting back here at Studio 1A. And everybody knows where we are. We are downtown Arlington, Virginia, in the heart of all things. Of course, that is Clarendon. I am back and excited to be back for episode 274. Back with my co-host, Julie Culley. Julie, what's up? How are you?
I'm here and I missed it. Let's do this.
Yeah, you did miss it. You missed
did.
the last show, but did
Yeah.
you physically miss the last show, but emotionally did you miss Pace the Nation? That's my question to you.
I did actually, because
You
I
did?
would have loved to be part of interviewing the guests that we had,
I know.
especially as part of Brooks PR and the meet we have coming up. So
Yep.
I was a little
Juliet-
jealous, little
Juliet and
little
Gary
jealous.
were awesome. So thank you for helping secure those stud guests. Every week is a star-studded guest list for Pace the Nation, though. So Juliet and Gary, they did not disappoint. We've got a big show today, Julie. Really excited about today's show. A couple other things to get into as well. You head out to Seattle soon for Brooks PR,
Mhm.
and you're heading out next week. Is that right?
It's on your calendar, on your shared family calendar. I leave on Sunday morning.
Yes.
And our chaperones arrive Sunday afternoon. And so we get started with the kids arriving on Monday and the meet is on Wednesday. So it's happening. I hope
Yep.
we're ready. I hope
So
we're ready.
this show will post on Monday and Wednesday of that week that the show posts here. You will be directing one of the best high school races in all the land. So
Mhm.
good luck.
Oh, thank you. No pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. That's Brooks PR. So super excited about that. Today, I'm super excited about a Brooks influencer. So another Brooks guest that I feel like, you know what, I'm going to take credit for securing this guest today. Really excited to have a comedian. He is a documentarian. He does documentaries. How do you say that? How would you say?
I
He
would
is-
just, because it's you, I would skip the title and just say he does documentaries.
He does. He does.
Because you kind of mix like humanitarian with someone who does documentaries and created a new word.
So yes, he does documentaries. He's a comedian. He is an actor. But for the purpose of this show, he's a runner, a trail runner, and a Brooks influencer. So Jeffery Binney will be joining us on today's show. Really excited to have Jeffery on. He did a documentary called Once is Enough. And it was a really awesome documentary. I want to get into talking to him about that, the process of putting it on, how he did it. Really good show on Amazon Prime. So if you got Amazon Prime, you should check that out. So we'll have Jeffery on the show today. Also today, I want to talk about and we sent Jeffery some of this stuff, our Pride collection that comes out. Love Is. Does it work with my earphones on? Can I put the hat on with my earphones on? Does that work?
No.
And for the listening audience, sorry, I'm putting on one of our awesome new Love Is hats. It's a line of apparel from Pacers Running for Pride Month. And actually we'll have it on sale the entire year. So we'll talk about that probably after we have Jeffery on the show. Also on today's program, big event in the Farley Culley household. I had a hernia, as people know, and I had hernia surgery this week. So if I struggle at all, I'm off the oxy, but if I struggle at all, I'm going to blame it on the hernia surgery or earlier this week. And actually, frankly, if you struggle at all, I'm going to give you a pass because you've been doing all the heavy lifting around the house, like physically literally and figuratively. You've been doing all the heavy lifting around the house. So we'll talk about my hernia as well.
Feels like a normal week for me. So just
No, don't make me laugh too hard. It still kind of hurts. But we'll get into that because I know you have some thoughts and input on exciting topics. Having a hernia and hernia surgery. Gotta dive into that. All right, but before we get into that, let's talk about the guest here. So Jeffrey was new to running a few years ago, overweight. He's got a great story. He's a great storyteller, and he tells it in this documentary that he does. Once is enough. We're going to talk to him about that, about his running, and his attempt at a 100-mile trail race. So next up on Pace the Nation, Jeffery Binney joins us here on episode 274 of Pace the Nation.
Pace the Nation is brought to you by Pacers Running Stores. Pacers has 6 stores in Northern Virginia and DC. For the best running footwear, apparel, and gear, just stop by or schedule a virtual fitting with the best running experts in the business. Pacers Running exists to help as many people as possible through running. For every run, it's Pacers Running.
All right, welcome back to the program. And now, Julie, we are excited to be joined via the StreamYard. I think he's maybe in Salt Lake City, Utah. It's Jeffery Binney, and I think I got that right this time. Jeffery
You
Binney.
got it
Jeffrey,
so right. Oh, I'm so well. Thanks for having me, y'all. And
Well,
Salt
thank
Lake City
you
was
so
100% correct. Yeah. that's
Yes,
where
yes. Thank you for joining us. And it is you're out in Utah. Is that correct? Couple
I
hours
am.
behind us.
Yeah. Yep. You're on the
Yes.
East Coast, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yep.
Yeah, mountain time
So
over
you-
here.
So your mountain time over there. So we appreciate you getting up early and joining us on Pace the Nation. Man, really excited to talk to you. We watched your documentary, which was awesome, amazing. I want to get into that.
Thank you.
You're a new influencer for Brooks. You're a comedian. You're an actor. You're a little bit of everything. But most importantly for us, you're a runner. Man,
I'm a runner. That's what matters first and foremost, right?
So let me ask you that. So when you go through the list of things that Jeffrey is, runner's got to be at top of the list, right?
Yeah, well, I used to do it in like air quotes, and I got so many messages about you are a runner, like that's, and I was like, no. I'm not saying I'm not a runner. I'm just saying it's kind of silly to call myself a runner, just because I grew up such a like chubby, overweight, super indoor kid, and so I just have a hard time like calling myself a runner and taking myself super seriously. But yes, I do run a decent amount, so I think that qualifies me as a runner.
Yeah, and I don't know whether I want to spoil the documentary or not because there is some twists and turns, but we'll talk about that. We'll talk about your your weight struggles as well. But I was curious, what kind of comedian would you describe yourself as? Because you are a funny dude.
Well, first of all, most of my comedy is more story based, so it's not always, but kind of like in my film. I mean, I use a lot of like chink like poop jokes to hopefully tell like a bigger, more comprehensive story, more meaningful story. So I don't know. I would say it's usually story based, and I would say maybe like kind of Ellen DeGeneres-y. Naughty, never filthy is what I say whenever I'm getting booked and they want to know if I'm clean. I always told myself that I would never tell a joke that I wouldn't be willing to tell my mom, but my mom is a pretty saucy broad, so do with that what you will.
So that's a wide range then. Well, Jeffrey, tell us about Brooks. I obviously am biased being the sports marketing manager there, and I get to work with Dustin and Ariella, who are part of our influencer team, but you are a new influencer to Brooks. So take us back. How did you get introduced to the brand? How did you get introduced to Dustin and Ariella? And what's your experience been like so far?
Yeah, well, in the winter, I was on one of my favorite trails, and there's this bridge on the trail. It's just this old wooden bridge, and it really looks nothing like the bridge from the movie, but it kept reminding me of that scene from Dirty Dancing where she's dancing across that bridge and she gets, she's trying to learn the choreography and she gets pissed and kicks the bridge. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just gonna bring my camera up here on my tripod at some point, and I'm just gonna like jack around for a while and make like recreate that scene. So I did, and I posted it, and of course I was in running gear, my trail running gear. I posted it, and who would have known? Apparently, a lot of people connected with that nostalgia because I suddenly gained a ton of followers, and people like Dustin and Ariella were popping into my inbox, chatting me up, and they told me about the Brooks Run Happy Advocate program, which is brand new.
Yeah.
And they were looking for runners to represent Brooks, to represent diversity in all of its different forms. I call us the misfit runners. I'm guessing Brooks' marketing department probably doesn't love that as
I
much.
love it. I love
Oh,
it.
good.
Let's roll with it.
But I mean, I'm the gay ginger chubby one. We have runners of every shape, size, color, creed, and everyone, like each person is more inspiring than the next. So when they told me what Brooks was up to, I was first flattered beyond belief, and then could not wait to get started. We're about 3 months in already. We've gotten to do some fun events. I've gotten to collaborate with some of the other Run Happy advocates. I think I've convinced almost all of them to dance with me on the internet.
I love it.
So anyway, that's how it happened, and it couldn't be going better. I'm having a blast, and it's so cool to see companies like Brooks putting their money where their mouth is. It's an ad in June is really cool, but a bigger commitment to change is like 30 times cooler.
Yeah, absolutely. And to make a quick plug for the show, two of the other Run Happy advocates have also been guests of our show. So
Yes.
Allison
was it?
Desir, Allison's been on the show before, and Ariel Tweedo.
Awesome.
So yeah, both of them. So
So Jeffrey, a 6-year-old Jeffrey or an 8-year-old Jeffrey would probably not have thought you'd be working for a running brand, which is just nuts, right?
It's pretty bonkers. I mean, 8-year-old Jeffrey was in the front yard on a pig farm in Missouri, with his mom's baton, from marching band, putting on shows in the bay window of my mom's bedroom, dreading having to run the mile for the Presidential Physical Fitness Award that we had to do every spring. That was Jeffrey. And he would laugh you out of the room if he could see what I'm up to right now.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from where I started.
It is pretty amazing. And you mentioned your mother. She had a big influence on your life and also in you getting into running. So tell us kind of how you got into running and why your mom inspired you to do so.
Yeah, well, when I was 11, she was diagnosed with pretty aggressive heart failure. And of course, they didn't tell an 11-year-old this, but I later found out that they really had only given her probably a few years max. It was pretty advanced. And, I grew up watching her struggle to fix that, because it was all obesity, lifestyle related. It was past the point of reversible, of course, but even with the things that she could delay, making eating habit changes, being more physical, she tried like really hard. She did give it a solid try, but she just never could just couldn't make it stick. She grew up on a farm in rural Missouri, and the food culture, the activity culture is just so different. I mean, I remember when I moved to the West Coast, and people were like, "Oh yeah, so let's meet up for lunch. I'm going with a hike with my grandma in the morning, but then we can do lunch." Like, what? First of all, your grandma's hiking, and two, you're just for fun going to hike in the morning. It just blew my mind because we don't do that in Missouri. That's not why we go into nature. We go into nature to work, and then the rest of our life is pretty different. So, I just watched her try so hard to make positive changes, and she just couldn't do it. and I was coming up to 30 years old. And she pulled out 17 years. They
Amazing.
had given her a few years, and she,
Amazing.
here I am, kind of saying that it didn't work, but clearly something worked because she was pretty darn resilient. But as I approached 30, it started to escalate, and it became somewhat clear that we were getting closer to the end. So I was living in New York City at the time, working as an actor, and I came back to Kansas City, where she was in the hospital, and I was there for about a year and a half, helping my family, and then she eventually lost her battle to heart failure. But while she was in the ICU, she was in the ICU for the last 3 months of her life, which is a very
Wow.
long time to be in an intensive care unit.
Where was this?
Um,
Where was the IC unit that she was in?
yeah,
Was it in
in
Missouri?
Kansas City.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you
Yeah,
were
it was in
there.
Sparks Heart
You were from New
Institute.
York, going back there and there a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah, I came back for the majority of the time, and when she was in the ICU, I kept reading these magazines that were on the waiting room tables, magazines that I thought were pretty funny and obscure, and one of them was Trail Runner magazine. And
Sorry, Jeffrey, how much did you weigh at the time when you're sitting there in the ICU unit reading a trail magazine?
well, the last time I weighed myself was 340 pounds, but anyone who's been uh, larger will tell you that that's not my maximum weight. We don't weigh ourselves when we know we're at our maximum weight.
Right.
340 was at some point when I had, spent a few weeks working out and thought I was making progress and wanted to weigh myself. So
Right.
I don't know, somewhere in the 340, 350, 60
Wow.
range, somewhere in there.
Okay.
Anyway, so I discovered that Trail Runner magazine and just kept picking it up over and over again. And I kind of gotten into cycling in New York. And I just kept thinking, well, that looks interesting. That looks kind of fun. Like, that's not what I thought running was. I thought running was, on a track with all the athletic kids, with my coach, with a stopwatch timing me, very annoyed that it was taking me so long to finish. And suddenly, well, we had a really bad hospital day one day. And I just went out and bought a pair of shoes and found a trail. I had no clue what I was doing. I didn't know where I was going. I just found a state park. The first pair of shoes I bought were those Vibram five
Oh
finger
my gosh.
shoes,
Yep.
those barefoot shoes,
Yep.
which I loved them. But were they the right choice for a muddy Midwestern day? They weren't. They weren't the right choice. I went for a run and instantly loved it, like right out of the gate. Like, first of all, I felt like a little kid. I was like jumping over logs and stuff. That was so fun and silly. And most of all, like, nobody was watching me. Nobody was timing me. Nobody was watching my fat jiggle. Like, I could just do whatever I wanted. Like, it didn't even matter when I finished or if I finished. Like,
Mhm.
it literally was just to go out and have fun. And I think, like, the biggest light bulb was that, like, for 45 minutes, I didn't think about life. I didn't think about my mom. I didn't think about all that stuff. And so it kind of, I jokingly say that I think trail running was the best therapy I possibly could have found after losing my mom. It was just so functional for me.
So, and maybe, I mean, ultimately saves your life. And I don't think that's a stretch.
Yeah, there's no question. My lifestyle was so wildly different. I
Yep.
mean, I'm still a big guy. I still love beer, but like the fact that I consume vegetables willingly. I mean, I call myself veganish. I'm like plant-based, somewhere in there between vegetarian and vegan, and that's mind blowing. I mean, I grew up on a pig farm of all places, and yeah, there's so many lifestyle changes. Not that you have to go vegetarian or vegan to be healthy, but it does inherently cause you to eat more vegetables and be a little more mindful and thoughtful about your food. And so, yeah, I mean, the fact that I'm active, the fact that I'm eating, nutrient dense foods. Are pretty mind blowing if you knew me before this. I don't know, before Jeffery 2.0 was created.
I love it.
That's incredible. I think of vegan as being one of the most difficult diets to change. You're talking about massive lifestyle change, and then you're talking about like swinging to that whole other side of the spectrum with vegan. So why vegan? Like, what was behind that motivation?
Yeah, well, I grew up on a pig farm in Missouri, so it obviously was not the go-to choice. I actually had a friend from college who was vegetarian, and he knew I grew up on a pig farm, and I really hadn't thought about it a lot. I really didn't have opinions about it, but he loved to like argue with me about farming animals.
That college friend, right?
That
Who's
Yeah.
college friend,
constantly,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, just for fun, I would participate and I'd badger him and play along and just get him so worked up, push all his buttons. And one time in one of those arguments, arguments, I don't know if they're arguments, whatever they were, he was like, I bet you can't go vegetarian for 30 days. He was like, you go to the PETA website right now, you can request a packet, they'll tell you how to do it, they'll give you recipes, and I bet you can't do it. Well, that's the best way to get
Yeah.
Jeffrey to do something. So that I did it, and I dove into it knowledge wise, and I instantly had this like mind shift reset where I was actually thinking about my food, which sounds so silly, but I never thought about like what was
Yeah.
in my food. Like
Yeah.
I didn't think about like nutrient density. That was
Mhm.
mind blowing to me. It's like, no, 100 calories is 100 calories. No, it's
Yeah.
not. And
Mhm.
so that just like slowly, well, not slowly, pretty quickly, really kind of started to change the way I was thinking about my food. And I suddenly wanted to eat that way. And
Yeah.
then the other component was that shockingly, I didn't miss meat. I
Yeah.
missed the crap. Like I miss like big nuggets from McDonald's.
Yeah.
I miss like
Right.
chicken tenders, like that kind of like
Yeah.
a pepperoni bagel bites. That's what I missed. But like I found myself not missing cooking meat. I wasn't missing a steak like I thought I would.
Mm.
And so it just kind of stuck. And so I was vegetarian for maybe 3, 4, 5 years, something like that. And then I moved to Los Angeles. I moved to LA right after my mom passed away. And I realized that I had turned into a bit of a French fry vegetarian because, everyone inherently assumes that being vegetarian is healthy, and it can be. But onion rings are often vegetarian.
Yeah.
French fries are vegetarian.
Depending on the fryer that it was in, but
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
And so I was like, you know what, I've really got to do something to be a little more responsible in how I'm eating. So one of my friends, apparently I'm heavily influenced by my friends.
Yes.
One other friend was vegan, and I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe that would be a good little try. I'll just go for like a few months just to kind of hit the reset button. And then it stuck. It stuck for probably 5 or 6 years. And then I now I married a rabid carnivore, and so now I'm somewhere. I would say I'm vegan 80% of the time, but
Ish. I like the ish. Yeah.
ish. Yeah, I have an affair now and then with a cheese,
So your mom passes away, and I know that's still tough for you to this day. And you really, you know, you really take the running to the next level. You do a 20 miler, but then you decide to do two things, and I'm not sure which order they came in. You decide to run Leadville and then do a documentary about running Leadville. Leadville being 100-mile trail race. That's one of the hardest ones in the entire world. And you decide to do it. So what happened first? Did you decide to do the documentary, or did you decide to run the race, or they both happened at the same time? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it was kind of three separate components. After my mom passed away, I wasn't doing great. I was in New York. I was doing stand up, and I was kind of getting burnt out on New York. Honestly, I never loved New York. I love it as a city. Living there can be hard. It's a different scenario to live in New
Yeah.
York City. And everyone asks me what my favorite city is, and I always say New York, and they're shocked because they know that I didn't like living there. But I wasn't loving New York anymore. I was frustrated career-wise. I thought it might be more fun to do film and television, and I had developed this new running addiction, and it was pretty rough to find trails in New York City, especially if you don't have a car. It's pretty hard to get out of the city. So I moved to Los Angeles, and I found myself a bit reclusive, and all I wanted to do was write material and perform it and disappear into the woods to run. I didn't want to deal with people. I just wanted to disappear and do those things. And one of my friends at one point was like, I wonder if there's like maybe something like a healthier way to do those things. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And a light bulb just went off, and I was like, you know what? I would love to set a ridiculous training goal, like 100-mile or something like that. And I would love to write my first like hour of material, you know, all a cohesive hour, not just
Yep.
random jokes. What if I like filmed both those things? Like, what if we captured the process of me trying these runs? And what if we filmed the stand-up / storytelling show? And what if we like slammed them against each other and it was, you know, one served the other to tell some story, whatever that story is going to be. And I was a nanny for a family in Beverly Hills at the time. And I had kind of mentioned the idea to the mom. The family owned a video game studio.
Okay.
And the short story
It's
is
so LA.
it's
You're a
so LA. I
nanny
know, I'm
for a
vomiting in my
family
mouth
who
as I
owns-
say this. Because the next thing I'm about to say is that within like 36 hours, the project got greenlighted by a small
Wow.
studio in LA. So it's the
Wow.
most ridiculous. It's the most
Yeah.
LA of stories. But keeping with the LA story theme, like a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks later, the studio was sold to some Japanese company who immediately shut down the division that was doing these small indie films. And so we decided to make it work. I was already had asked a lot of friends to work on it, and they're like, you know what, we can do this really cheaply. Like, it'll be an awesome story. It'll be a fun project. Like, we'll figure it out. Let's get scrappy. So that's where the idea came from. That's where we started. At that point, I had done a 20-miler.
Yep.
And before I was ready to like officially pull the trigger, I set a 50-miler as the goal. I was like, if I can run a 50-miler and survive and still want to run again, then let's dive into this whole 100-mile thing. And so I did the North Face Endurance Challenge in the Bay
50-miler.
50.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it was awful, but I've just freaking loved it. I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun. And so, you know, the deal was sealed. So I brought Ian Sharman on to train.
He was your coach.
Yeah, I'm sure everyone knows who that is.
Yep.
And
I mean, go big. You went real big with one of the best coaches, best ultra trail runners out there. So I love it. Okay.
Yeah. And I remember when I reached out, I don't think I could possibly have been more terrified to message him, just to even reach out to him. And I don't know if you know him very well, but he is so warm and sweet and kind. And so I couldn't have gotten luckier.
He was great on the documentary too. I've met him once. Great on the documentary, man. Yeah.
Yeah,
he was a
really good opposition to me too,
Yes.
because our personalities are nearly opposite. He's so calm and centered and thoughtful, and I'm over here freaking out, and God only knows what.
Right.
What was I saying?
Well, I want to say I do think it really worked. I love how you spliced in your stand-up with the running parts of it. It really worked. It was freaking genius, man. And you got to check it out. I know it's been out there for a while, so maybe a lot of our listeners and viewers have seen it. Once is enough. It's a documentary about you going to run a 100-mile race, Leadville. There's twists and turns, and I want to just ask a couple things, and I don't want to spoil it because there are twists and turns.
I mean, I feel free to spoil it. We can just keep the disclaimer that, like, if you don't like spoilers, stop where you are, go watch it, and then come
check
back.
in about 10 minutes.
But it's the accidental meat of the film is a spoiler, and it's kind of hard not to talk about.
And I actually think it worked better because, like, so first you're running Leadville. And at mile 44, you said, this is the hardest thing you've ever done. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm rooting for you so hard. And I'm like, this dude's got 56 miles to go. And this is the hardest thing he's ever done. And you look dead at that point. And ultimately, you know, again, spoiler alert, you weren't able to accomplish Leadville. and you weren't able to finish. You didn't hit the cutoff time at, I want to say mile 50 or 60 or something.
It's like 44 or
40
46. It's at the top
46.
of the
Okay, so that
class.
was the point where you said it was the hardest thing you've ever done. And how devastating was that after all this buildup? You've got a freaking documentary going about this, and you don't do it.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I'm not usually one to care much about what other people think, but this was not one of those times. I was okay with my own failure. I was pretty disappointed, but I knew that it was going to be really hard. And I think I like really saw the fact that I didn't quit, I got pulled, as a huge personal victory. I don't think it mattered to anyone else, but when people would ask me about it, I would just say, like, I can't believe I still wanted to go. Like, I can't believe if they would have let me, like, I still was going to go. Like, that's incredible. So I think, I took some, I don't know, consolation in that aspect. But what was so hard was all the other stuff because, we were filming this for the film. So we obviously had promoted the crap out of it on social media. I had a live GPS tracker set up so that people could go to my website and watch me move through the course. I had made such a big deal about it. My family had all come from the Midwest to help. We had, a small film crew there. We had been there for a week shooting interview footage and stuff like that. And that's what bothered me was all these other people who gave up
Inconvenience
time and literally traveled like across the continent to help me with this, and I didn't do it. And that's what was hard. What was hard was getting on that live tracker and watching like all the like excited, like, oh my God, he made it to the mile 28 station. Awesome. Oh, I think something's wrong with my tracker. Has anyone seen him move? Like, I'm not sure where he is. And like to watch it slowly devolve into people figuring out what was going on. Like, that's what was hard for me. And we knew Leadville was going to be hard. And I think, it wasn't Ian's top choice, but for the film's purposes, Leadville is one of the oldest, most grand, most epic 100-milers, definitely in the country and quite frankly in the world. It's an awesome run. It's just so beautiful, and it's been around for ages. And there's no qualifying, or at least there wasn't a qualifier at the time. So it was one of the few 100-milers that I could that was epic, that was film worthy. That didn't require me to spend, another 6 months like just trying to qualify for it. So for those reasons, we went with Leadville. And looking back, obviously, it was a silly choice.
Dude, the altitude.
Can you imagine if it had worked out?
The altitude in Colorado there, I mean, that alone was going to stack the deck against you.
Yeah, because I was coming from California at sea level. And so, it's easy to see now on the backside that it might not have been the best choice. But I had a producer that night. She's also my best friend. She was like, I know you don't want to hear this, but you probably have to do another one. Why? And I was like, no, no. And I was like, you saw how today went.
She's like, I don't know how to end the story. I mean, for the documentary, like, we can't just be like everybody's sad and crying and like the credits come up.
Yeah. Well, what she said next was, she was like, I know you don't want to hear this, but like, honestly, it's probably a little bit better for the film that this didn't work out.
Totally.
And I flipped her off and walked out of the room. I was like, screw you.
Listen, so I'm watching it thinking, all right, everybody loves a good comeback story. So she's right. She's absolutely right. You need the good comeback story. It made the documentary that you were able to come back, and ultimately, we'll get into that in a second. But the fact that you didn't do it, and then the comeback story is just so much better than not doing it initially. So it's almost like you planned it. It was almost like it was planned.
I was pissed.
Yeah.
I was pissed about everything. I was pissed at all the money that had been spent. I was pissed at how much time and effort I spent working towards this, and I didn't really have much to show for it other than a fun trip where I kind of went for a long run and things didn't go as planned.
And as a viewer, real quick, as a viewer, I'm thinking it's once is enough. Man, he's not going to do it again, because the story is once is enough. So once, your one attempt, but
I decided to do
you decided to do it again.
And I made a slightly more responsible choice the second time around by settling on the Rocky Raccoon, which is a 100-miler north of Houston. Ups and downs, but substantially less elevation change than the Leadville 100. And I was so pessimistic. I did, first of all, I didn't tell anybody because of all those things I just mentioned that were tough in Leadville. I didn't tell anyone except for my sister and a friend from high school who were coming to crew for me, a handful of best friends. And then, poor guy, I brought one. He was the director of cinematography, but he's the only person that I brought to Texas. I was like, guys, honestly, like, this probably isn't going to go well. We're going to go do it. Let's try it and see what happens. But it's probably not going to happen. So I was like, self-preservation to the max. I was like, we're not telling people. I don't want humans there who are going to talk to me or have thoughts about. I'm just going to try to do this. I'm going to create the smallest bubble I can possibly create in which to do it. And for whatever reason, it worked out. I stumbled across the finish line minutes before the final cutoff, but I did it finally. And thank God. I don't know what the film would have looked like if I hadn't. I don't know if it would have happened. I don't know. But that's the way things went.
And from a viewer standpoint, Jeffrey, it was amazing. Like, I literally, when you cut the videos from your childhood to you finishing, like, I was tearing up, and I think a lot of it evoked emotion. And I think as vulnerable as you were, and that's what you are. In 100 Mile, there's no acting. You're an actor, but there's no acting. You were totally vulnerable. I mean, but it evoked emotion for the audience, and I thought it was incredibly well done, especially at the end. The story, your pictures of you as a kid, you crossing the finish line. Man, I was a mess, crying on my couch.
Good.
So it was very well done.
Well, that I love. You're not the first person to point that out, and I'm not an editor, but that was one idea of mine that I was really proud of. It came from everyone always asks, like, what are you thinking about while you're out there? Like, what are you doing when you're out there? Like, oh, you went for a run this morning? Yeah, I did 20 miles. It took me 14 hours. What are you thinking about? And so that's where that idea came from. I was like, well, here's what I'm thinking about. All these things constantly.
So tell us about the Mae West comment, or the Mae West quote, and that's how you got the title of the documentary.
Yeah, I've loved this quote since I was a little kid, and I was just going through some inspirational quotes, as any runner does on those rough days, and you just dive into Google and desperately search for anything to motivate you. And I stumbled across that quote again, and instantly, we had just started working on the film, and instantly I knew that I wanted that to be the title of the film, because when you hear the title of the film, Once is Enough, you make the assumption that, like, oh, okay, cool, running a 100-miler or some component of this, doing it once is enough. But the quote, which is revealed the very last thing in the film, it's a quote from Mae West, and she said, "You only live once, but if you do it right, once is enough." And so I wanted to leave everyone with that at the end. Because I feel like it really articulated, like, the thesis of the film. Like, at the end of the day, this wasn't about losing weight. It wasn't about running 100 miles. It wasn't about, anything else that you could take away from the film. It was about me just, making sure that I'm seizing life and not giving up opportunity. My mom was only 58 when she died, which I now, as a almost 40-year-old, realize is so freaking young. And when I was a little kid, I think because she was sick from when I was such a young age, but I always thought of her as older. But the older I get, the more angry almost I get that she was robbed. She was robbed of who knows how many years. And so it's just all about making the most of it. I who knows, I could have cancer right now as we sit here and not know it. So if I'm going to go out, I want to know that like my time was well spent. I want to know that I got outside. I want to know that I saw things. So yeah, that's where the quote came from. And I don't know, it like pushes something in me. And like, I'm even having a hard time talking about it right now because I just, I think I feel really lucky that like I had that wake up call.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have otherwise. So it sucked. It always sucks to go through those life events, but I don't know. It wasn't for nothing, you know? Or at least I want to make sure that it wasn't for nothing.
That is amazing. And you're like, your emotion is evoking a lot of emotion in us. And yeah, we've got young kids, and some days we feel like we're in the thick of everything and just it's crazy and it's maddening. And
Ugh.
like, how do we get from each day to each day? And both of us have careers, and you just stop and think like, this is your life. Like, this is, you are in control. You are like making choices every day to live it the best that you can.
And the way
that's
that you
amazing.
come across is that whatever ridiculous thing you want to do right now, stop what you're doing and do it.
Yeah, like right now. Even if it's, what's a crazy thing you want to do? Well, what's something you can do? You can spend 3 minutes doing today. Is it putting out a feeler to a friend who might be a resource? Is it, what small thing is it? Those 3 minutes a day like add up really fast. And I feel like I do some motivational speaking now, which is really rewarding because it really itches my desire to like tell poop jokes with a purpose is what I call it. It's really fun to be able to like weave comedy into, hopefully a more substantial, motivating talk. But the talk that I give the most is called Smart Enough to Start, Dumb Enough Not to Quit. And I kind of feel like that was my key to ultra running. Was a magical thing happened when I got to the point for the first time where I was on a long run and any reasonable person would stop. I was probably 15 miles in, things start to fall apart, everything starts to hurt. And I made the conscious choice, like, to just keep running. Like, let's just keep going. Like, it's not long-term, nothing bad is happening. Just keep going and let's see what happens when you don't stop when any reasonable person should. And it turns out that's when the magic happens. Those aches and pains, like they go away, they pass. Like your mood, you're like, oh, I can't do this, I have to quit. You're literally ready to pull yourself from a race. And who knew, a Snickers and some pickle juice, 15 minutes later, your blood sugar's back up and you are ready to rumble.
You're rock and rolling.
All this magic happens when you push yourself like past that point that is reasonable. That being said, you have to be so careful about injury and things, but you do slowly learn to kind of identify what's short term and what's longer term and needs to be babied.
All right. Well, I want to get you out of here. I wanted to mention I've really enjoyed seeing you. It is Pride Month. I've enjoyed seeing you on a lot of the Brooks Instagram posts, and you can follow Jeffery. It's at Jeffery Binney. That's Binney, right. Binney.
Yeah,
he's on
Instagram.
Binney,
Chris. Binney.
Benny. That's what I said. I think I said that.
Benny. You said Benny.
Ben. Binn.
Ben.
Yep. Benny. Yes. Yep. So, and
we're going to argue about this the entire time, Jeffrey.
But it is Pride Month, and how important is it for you to be this advocate for Brooks during this time?
I mean, I think it's so important 365 days of the year because it is already such an inclusive community. But there's always work to do. I know that I don't see, I know it's Pride Month. I also don't see enough, lesbian, gay, bi, trans runners at the starting lines, but I especially don't see enough runners of color. Allison, who you mentioned earlier, there's some really inspiring runners out there doing some really cool stuff to increase diversity in the running world. in every capacity. And I think it's so important to just for us to be seen. I think that just the fact that Brooks is putting us out into the world for people to see is so important. I think about, like if I was a little kid and I saw me like on a Brooks ad or like doing some silly Instagram dance for Brooks, I can't help but wonder like how that might have like shifted the way I saw things, because it wasn't even an option. Like I never considered joining the track team. I never considered like going for a run. And now looking back, like how silly that I thought that that's what running was. And it is that for some people, and that's amazing. But there's a space for everyone. There's a space for the gays. There's a space for we chubby gingers. There's a space for everyone. And I hope that more people start finding the sport, because it's so rewarding. There's so many different ways to run. You really, run your run is kind of a eye roll inducing phrase, but it's so true. I mean, I can't believe, I can now, but 10 years ago, I couldn't believe that there was a sport that was just about like surviving. Like it really doesn't matter. There are people who want to win, but the goal is literally just to finish, just survive and get over that finish line. And that was something that really resonated for me. And to be quite frank, made me feel like a total badass. I think I spent my whole childhood believing and hearing that, like, we can't wait for you to go into theater. Like, that's going to be like awesome for you. Right. Being told that I wasn't outdoorsy because I wasn't, being told that I wasn't an athlete because I wasn't. But why? Right. Why not? Why can't those things be me? So if I had somebody like me or Allison or Micah or any of the Ariel, any of the Run Happy advocates, I just wonder how things might have been different. But we'll only spend so much time worrying about the past.
But through those experiences, I mean, and I'm going to make a plug here for Brooks, but
plug it.
A lot of what we're working on is a youth strategy, and it's beyond track and field, right? Like we have, and Chris and I talked about it earlier in the show, the huge track meet that's coming up for high school kids that Brooks hosts in Seattle, and I'll be there Sunday to Thursday. And that's like the elite level of the sport, right? But we are totally shifting our mindset to like, how do we just get kids moving? Like, because if they go into high school, beyond, like, if they're not going to make their freshman team or are good enough on that competitive level, or even just like yourself, like was told you were never going to be an athlete, like we still need to get kids moving, right? Like, and they can find this whole other journey inside the sport that has nothing to do with holding a stopwatch, right? Like seeing a time. And it's introducing them to just running, physical movement. That is something the brand's really passionate about.
Well, and it gives you a really cool, I don't know, sense of worth. I don't know what to call
confidence.
it.
It's confidence.
Yeah, it is. And I think that's what draws me to ultra running so much is how it makes me feel, because I feel, I mean, I think you have to have the right personality type for it, but I love being responsibly in pain and figuring it out and getting done and like making it happen. That's so rewarding to me, because I never thought that I don't know if I shouldn't be cursing. I never thought that I was a badass, and it turns out I am. Who knew? Nobody is more surprised than me. And I love every single long run that reminds me of that.
It's amazing.
All right, it's Jeffery Binney. You can find him on Instagram at Jeffery Binney. He's a comedian. He's an actor. He's a documentary filmmaker. You can find his documentary film, Once Is Enough, Amazon Prime, a lot of other places. Go check it out. I promise you won't be disappointed. He's a Brooks influencer, but most importantly, he's a runner. and he finished a 100-mile race. More than you and I could say, Julie, that's for sure.
I've never done that.
Jeffrey, man, this has been awesome. Thank
So
you
fun.
so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Let's be in touch, and we'll have you back on again sometime soon.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he goes. Jeffery Binney, Brooks Influencer, join us on Pace the Nation. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back after this.
Pace the Nation is brought to you by Pacers Running Stores. Pacers has 6 stores in Northern Virginia and DC. For the best running footwear, apparel, and gear, just stop by or schedule a virtual fitting with the best running experts in the business. Pacers Running exists to help as many people as possible through running. For every run, it's Pacers Running.
All right, welcome back to the program, and thanks again to our guest, Jeffery Binney, for joining us today on Pace the Nation. I finally got it, Julie. I finally got it.
Yeah, it
Jeffery
took about
Binney.
an hour, but you got there. Way to go.
What a stud. Awesome to hear from his perspective. After watching Once Is Enough, it was great to actually talk to him in person. Didn't disappoint. I knew his interview would be great, inspiring. Had us almost in tears at
Oh,
points.
definitely
during
in tears.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
it was
So
it's
yeah.
pretty awesome.
So great stuff from Jeffery. You said at the end, Julie, which I thought was really good. Like you talked about how the high school, you're going to be out there in Seattle this next week with all these elite high school kids. Well, what if there is a path for a 8-year-old or an 11-year-old Jeffery out there to participate, not necessarily being part of the Brooks PR invite where you're the fastest of the fast, but really participate as, a teenager or high schooler. So I think we're headed there, and I think he's a good advocate for that.
Absolutely.
All right. So I wanted to get to a couple of other things, unless you had anything else to gush about for Jeffery. I mean, there's so much to gush about.
No. We've talked way too much about other things. We need to recenter the
Yeah.
conversation back to Chris Farley. So
The problem with having a comedian on when you've just had hernia surgery is that it hurts to laugh. And you made me laugh a couple times this week. You're pretty funny. You're sneaky funny. And
Thanks.
it really has been painful to laugh, but I am on the mend. So I had hernia surgery, as you guys know. I had a hernia, and I talked about it on this show a month ago or so. Finally had the surgery on Tuesday, June 7th. I was out of it on June 7th, June 8th, June 9th. We were recording June 10th, and I am so close to being back. Unfortunately, not so close to running yet, but I have been worthless around the house. So I officially apologize, Julie. Thank you for all you've done over the past week.
Well, the apology is now officially official,
Yeah.
since it's
On the
on
show.
the podcast and
Right.
on the show. I wasn't going to accept the other apologies.
Yeah.
But no, to be honest, like other than being slightly annoyed at how dramatic you are, because your wife has had 3 C-sections and had to like
What?
immediately start nursing a child and
Yeah,
caring for
way
another
harder than-
life
yes.
with an actual incision in their stomach, not just laparoscopic little
Yes.
teeny tiny dots.
Correct.
And I've also had hernia surgery, a double hernia surgery. So
Yes,
but
correct.
if I'm not throwing all that at you of like how we talk about like, you don't always have to one up me. Like
Right.
if I'm not trying to one up you, then I look at you and I think, oh, this is hard.
Yeah.
You love running and you were in pain running starting like last week. It was getting really uncomfortable. And our dog is really suffering. Like she
Yes.
might be really suffering the most.
She's not running, right?
She's
'Cause
not
I run with
running.
her.
She's depressed.
Yep.
Like you're not running. You're depressed. So like
Mhm.
normally in this, if you were gone, like if you were traveling for work, it's like, all right, I'm in charge. I got the kids. We got the activities, the dinners. I got everything lined up. Like no big deal. It's actually hard to deal with you right now. And
Yeah.
that sounds really like,
Mean?
it sounds really mean
Mhm.
because you're also like, oh, I'm not doing anything around the house. So I really want to help, but you're like wanting to help actually like slows all the processes down, Like this morning, you're like, I'm going to make lunch for the kids. I'm like, great. And like 45 minutes later, you're still trying to make lunches for the
Secretly.
kids. And you're asking these questions that like, you're like, Paul likes turkey sandwiches, right? And I'm like, Paul has only eaten turkey sandwiches every day
For
for the
years.
last like 4 months. and you're like, okay, so there's just a lot of like slowness happening here. So I'm almost like, maybe it's just better for you to lay in bed for like a week.
Right. So
And
maybe
I could just
this
count
is
you
a-
out instead of like sort of counting you in.
Right.
So I'm
this
trying
is-
not to be mean about it. I'm fine with you taking the rest that you need. It's the somewhere in between the gray space that you're trying to operate that just kind of makes it hard
So
on
there's a
everybody.
lesson to be learned here for people like me. I can get you so used to just doing everything that after
It's
the
just
hernia's
easier for
over-
me. It is
After
like
the hernia is over, you might just do it. So,
I think your business partner probably feels the same. Like
Yeah.
the more involved you are, the harder it is on us.
Yeah,
So just
yeah.
like smile and build those relationships and you know,
so-
pick the kids up if you can, but you're not even allowed to drive right now.
Yes.
So it's
Well, I'm
just
off
like,
the oxy, so I can drive. I got off the oxy, so
Okay.
we could do this interview. So I wanted to mention.
sorry if I sound mean. I'm not
I wa-
trying to be mean. I've
I
been
wanted to-
really sad for you. I really
know.
have been, because I know how much you care about running, and I know this setback is upsetting you, and I know it's frustrating for you, and I know I get it. I just trying to protect
You
our
don't have a lot of
relationship here.
empathy, right? I
No,
got
I'm trying to protect our relationship.
Yeah.
I'm trying to
So
protect
I'm
us.
trying to flip it around to this is a positive.
Okay.
I'm on the mend. I feel like so if you have a hernia surgery, there's a tough few days, but I can see that it's improving, and I can tell that I'll be able to run. I think in 10 days. The doctor said 2 weeks, but I think I will be out there soon. I see a path to being out there soon, pain-free. And that is really exciting to me, especially today when I'm like not in a haze from the medication. So if you have a hernia, if you're going through it, trust me, you got this. It gets better. You can get out running again, and it won't be too long. And I appreciate, I got some advice from Ryan, who heard on the podcast that I was having a hernia surgery. So he gave me some good advice, and a couple others, including you. Sean helped me get the appointment at MedStar. I had a great experience over there. So overall, other than you doing all the heavy lifting at home, it's been a positive. So I just wanted to update our audience. I'm sure they are worried about me. All right. Wanted to quickly, before we get out of here, mention again our apparel line for Pride Month. It's going to be available all year long. If you're watching it on the YouTube stream, I've got one of the hats. You can order them. Love Is collection at runpacers.com. So go check that out. We got Jeffrey some of the gear, and so I hope to see him out there running in it at some point there soon. So check out runpacers.com for this new collection that I'm really excited about called Love Is. It's on the front page of our website. All right, Julie. Great show.
Thanks, Chris.
Great guests. Thanks again to our guest today, Jeffery Binney. Give him a follow. Instantly give him a follow on Instagram. It's at Jeffery Binney. That's 2 N's, Binney, Jeffery Binney on Instagram. Check out his documentary, Once Is Enough. It was well worth the time, the hour spent watching it. All right. So thanks to our guests. Thanks to Chris behind the scenes. Julie, great stuff. Good luck this week in Seattle. I'm sure you'll kill it. We want an update when you come
Brooks
back.
PR Invitational.
Brooks PR Invitational. It's gonna be
Wednesday,
awesome.
June 15th.
Yep, it's
Streaming
gonna be
live.
awesome. So so everybody check that out. It's streaming live. Work. You can find it on Runner Space.
Runner Space.
Yeah,
Yep.
check it out. For those who are interested, check it out on Runner Space. All right. For my co-host wife, Julie Culley, I'm Chris Farley. This is Pace the Nation. We will see you in 2 weeks.